Hello and welcome. I am Mike Bankhead, your host, songwriter and bass player from Dayton, Ohio. On today's episode, which is number 7, I have a conversation with Tod Weidner, a grizzled veteran of the Dayton music scene. In fact, he is the person playing guitar on the song you're hearing right now in the background, Carry On, from my first album. It's really a joy and a privilege and all sorts of other flowery adjectives to welcome him to the podcast and have a very lengthy conversation that I hope you will enjoy as much as I did. Hey there, Todd.
This meeting is being recorded by the host or a participant. Got it.
Right. The host is me. The participant would be you.
I am the participant.
One Tod Weidner.
Hi, Mike.
Hi, Todd. So,
how are you? Nice shirt.
I'm okay, thanks. For those of you who can't see the shirt, because, I'm not going to distribute the video, the shirt says Shrug, and then Dayton, kind of the way we pronounce it, Date, glottal stop, in. Dayton. And then Don't Panic, which I'm sure is stolen from The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
Yeah. Dan, it's also spray painted on my pedal board case, which was kind of my litmus test for people. If they saw that and
how well read they are.
Yeah, we were going to be friends if somebody kind of responded to my stencil on my road case. So yeah, I'm a huge Douglas Adams fan.
Tell the people who are listening what this Shrug is, because some of them are not going to know you the way I know you.
Well, Shrug is a band I have had, a Dayton, Ohio-based band that I led and co-founded with Dan Stahl back in 1994. Our first show was in September 94, and we're not really technically done. It's obviously been put on hold when I moved 2,500 miles away across the country to the Bay Area. But I hope that we continue to play shows when and where we can. But it's been a huge major part of my life since then, and we've got 6 albums, 25 years and counting. 26 now.
It's more than 25.
Yeah, 26 now. Yeah, lots of effort. Most of my creative output has gone into Shrug until very recently when I started up my solo career, which is I think might be why I'm on this podcast. I don't know for sure.
Well, I mean, there's an excuse to talk to you because you moved from our fair city to the city by the bay. First, let me just say I'm glad you said Shrug is and not Shrug was. Mm-hmm. I was afraid that it was going to be was.
It's kind of, I guess you could call it hiatus. But I snuck back into town for kind of a clandestine visit in June and managed to, get everybody in our bass player's basement where we rehearse, and we got a little practice in just to kind of blow the dust off and just center. And at that point, it was the height of the pandemic, and I hadn't done anything musical with people up to that point. So it was just good to get in a room with friends and make noise again. So
you really should have videoed that entire thing and sold them.
Oh,
I'd have bought
no, it was rusty. It was creaky for sure. It was fun, but it was not. I wouldn't call it releasable. But it was really good to see those guys again because they're family and they always will be. And I have sent them a few songs over the course of the pandemic. Obviously, everybody's got a lot going on, but we were trying the cross country recording. I'll send them some GarageBand tracks and they're building on them. So some of those may see the light of day at some point. So yeah, we're just kind of leaving it sort of casual. Probably, play a show every now and then if the stars line up when I'm back in Dayton. Yeah, kind of focusing on other things for sure at the moment. Yeah.
This is a good segue to what you're doing now. You were always the songwriter in Shrug. Mm-hmm. So even though that was a band, one could say that's basically Tod Weidner expressing himself.
Sure.
And I'm sure the other folks in the band added, like you weren't telling your bass players what you wanted them to play all the time, I'm sure.
Not all the time. Sometimes I would have a pretty good idea of what I wanted, but I I tried to. I was in complete denial. It wasn't until embarrassingly recently that I was finally convinced that I was the leader of the band. I would always really refuse to admit that because I like bands. I like gangs, and just because I'm bringing the songs in, I tried. It was always my intention to give the members of the band freedom to express themselves, because otherwise it just becomes it's stiff. It's
And that's probably why you were able to keep the same group of people together for so long with very few changes compared to most bands.
Relatively few, yeah. I mean, we had kind of a bass player situation for a long time there, but yeah, we tend to add members than fire members. It's so the family would just get bigger. And in a couple cases, it literally is family. Ken, the keyboardist, is my wife's cousin, and Dan is
your brother-in-law now.
Exactly, yeah. Married my sister in 2003, so he's literally family. And I think what you were getting at was
those are your songs. That's what I was getting.
Those are my songs, yeah. And
I don't mind the story because I think we're friends. Mm-hmm. If you can't tell, dear listener, we're friends.
But, yeah, we go way back.
Way back.
Yeah.
But yeah, my point was, those are your songs, mm-hmm. and you still write songs. Mm-hmm. But the way that you arrange the songs and the genre that they end up being expressed in when they're recorded has changed mm-hmm. over the years.
Yeah,
and I'd kind of like you to talk about that, like the why, the how, that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. Because that's interesting for people who are into music or songwriters. I'm sure that you write with an acoustic guitar.
More often than not. Not necessarily always, but yeah. It's
mostly.
Or an unplugged electric. I rarely set up the whole rig to just write a song.
Right. But an acoustic guitar gives you a blank canvas as far as mm-hmm. arrangement when you go record it and genre.
Yeah.
You could turn it into anything. So I kind of want to hear you riff on the journey through genre that your recordings have taken over the last many, many years.
Well, a lot of it has to do with just the natural stages you go through as a music fan. I was 24 when Shrug started, and this was 1994. So if you can put yourself in the position of a 24-year-old in 1994 and what was popular on the radio, I was hot off the all the Seattle stuff. I was really very into the I know that those bands hate the word grunge, so I resist using it. So I'm just going to say the Pacific Northwest music scene, because it is definitely there is a sound to it. It's murky, it's dark, it's emotional, angst-ridden generally. I gravitated to that because, I was in my late teens and early 20s, and that's what dudes in their late teens and early 20s gravitate. I've got pain, man. You don't know my pain. And it coincided with me learning how to write songs. So that was kind of my language. At the same time, I was introduced to, right around that same time, that first Counting Crows album came out. I became an REM fan. And I realized that it doesn't have to be feedback drenched and crushingly heavy to get some of these emotions across. And
sure is fun though.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I had my share of it. And that actually, that speaks to kind of where I was heading with this, is as you get older, you respond to different ways of expressing emotions. They can be the same emotions, but having it delivered quietly and sparsely, sometimes that has more of an impact. Some of the early Dylan stuff when he was solo, like It's All Right My Own One Won't Be Bleeding or Masters of War, there's really very little going on there. It is as heavy as anything Soundgarden ever put out. And Muddy Waters' Manish Boy, that's heavier than anything Black Sabbath ever did. He put it out in 75 with Johnny Winter and stuff on that album. And it is just, there's weight to it. It sounds like there's an Old Testament, prophet vibe coming through. So I guess my point is that the older I get and the more exposed I am to different genres of music, and the fact that I start feeling a little silly jumping around like a maniac like I did when I was in my 20s. I'm now 51, and first of all, it would take me days to recover from the level of energy I used to have on stage in the early days of Shrug. But you just sort of get a little bit more refined, find out what works for you, and as it happened, as my songwriting developed, it just sort of started feeling more at home. And I guess the broad term is Americana, which is almost as encompassing as alternative music was in the 90s. It tends to lose all meaning. Americana to me seems like anything with guitars in it now is Americana.
Sleater Kenny would be interested to hear you say that.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, I'll amend that. Anything with lower gain guitars, any hint of twang, and that's just sort of, that became kind of the language, the vernacular I ended up trying to write in, musically and lyrically. And, once you become aware of that, sometimes you can kind of lean into it, which I think is what we started doing. We just realized this group of people was good at making that sound. And it got more and more to the point where some of the earlier songs that experimented with other more rock heavy genres started feeling more like a costume that we were putting on. Even though they were our songs, they started sounding like covers to me. Because there's a point where it gets harder and harder to put yourself in the place you were when those were written, and that's a disservice to you and the audience, because I'm a big fan of sincerity. I like walking the walk and being able to stand behind what I'm doing, and if I'm self-conscious about something, it's going to come out, and that's going to be reflected in the performance, and then that is not fair to the people who came to see it, So
that's a conundrum, because there are a lot of people that love your band, where those songs are the favorite ones, are some of the most treasured songs of your catalog.
It is a conundrum.
I'm one of those people, by the way.
Yeah,
I like all those songs.
And from time to time, we try to resurrect one of those, and it's just like, sometimes it's better than others, but some of them, it's like, I can't even relate to the guy who wrote this. And here's something. I've talked to a lot of people. I've had a lot of nerdy music discussions lately over the pandemic with a lot of friends, and one thing that keeps coming up over and over again, I think in music, context is at least, I would say, 75 to 80% of what people like about music is context. It's what you were doing, who you were hanging out with when you heard these songs. It's not necessarily the song, who you were, exactly. It's not so much, the guitar tone here is great and how it fits in with the kick. No, I was hanging out with Steve, and that was that summer where we went and did this thing. Or, I'll give you an example. I adored Jane's Addiction when they were putting, the original lineup was putting albums out, because it was a soundtrack to this amazing summer I had in 1991. I went to see Jane's Addiction play Hara Arena, the late lamented Hara Arena at Dayton, in the summer, right before the first Lollapalooza tour. They were actually touring Ritual Day, Low Habitual, right before the actual big first Lollapalooza got started. And I remember the energy in that room, and they were my favorite band at the time. The weather was great. I remember towards the end of the show, Perry got, as the concert was kind of winding down, I think they were playing Summertime Rolls towards the end of the thing. And he said, he thanked the crowd for their energy, which was kind of heavy to hear, because he was picking up on it as well, obviously. And he mentioned something I don't remember the exact quote, but he basically said, it's going to be a good summer. And I remember hearing that and thinking, it is going to be a good summer. It is a good summer. It's already a good summer. And that's what I think of when I think of that band. Now, if I went and put on a CD now, I'd still enjoy it, but the production is dated. It's certainly, especially nothing shocking. The last time I was, I don't know why I'm going on about Jane's Addiction so much. I guess I'm just using it as an example. But all the the gated reverb on the snare, and it sounds very much a product of the late '80s. I still love the music.
Half of those words I didn't know what they meant, though, but I think Thad Britton was with you on the Jane's Addiction love.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Thad and I have bonded on that band a lot. But my point being, though, it's like yeah, I mean, it has as much to do with what I was doing, where I was in my life, and who I was in my life when this music entered my life. Is why I love it. It's not necessarily the sound of the album or the quality of the songs, and I think that's probably. I love hearing people say that. Oh, I love that. There are Shrug albums that I physically have to leave the room if they're on because I can't stand listening to them.
Don't tell me which ones those are.
I won't.
I know probably, but I don't want you to break my heart.
But I'm sure as an artist yourself, you have songs like, oh God, this is embarrassing. I can't believe, because you hear the.
I do. I hear. Well, I'm a lot.
And what you
better.
Change about it.
I'm a lot better musician now than I was when I first started making albums.
All I hear in those early things is what I'd change about it. And the people and the fans don't have that burden. They just, because this has always sounded this way to them. This reminds them of this great summer they had. So while I appreciate, their liking or love for certain songs, it doesn't make it any easier for me to just kind of inhabit that space because my context was different. Yeah. I was in a whole different place than they may have been when they were here. So
I think there's actually some positive advice there for musicians in general. Mm-hmm. When you finish something, the way your audience hears it is not the way you heard it through the writing and the editing and the 17 times you changed the arrangement and the 17 times you changed the mix, and you hear all of that when
it always sounds like it's still a work in progress.
It's like, oh, it's not done. But the people who listen to our songs never hear it that way because this is the song they hear the end result. They love it, right? Mm-hmm. So
I would give a king's ransom to hear my music through somebody else's ears. And recently, over the last couple Shrug albums and the project I'm doing now, I prefer not to be around in the mixing process because I find that helps me hear it with fresh ears when it's because I was really, really hands-on for a long time. And
wow. See, we're different that way. I don't know enough about it. I don't want anything to do with the mix. I just want.
I learned that
when it's done.
I learned that all I can do is slow things down and just add aggravation and just be. I'll make this terrible, and I don't know enough about mixing to really be. I'll just micromanage everything and slow everything. There's a certain nuts and bolts process that mixing engineers have. That it's how you do it, and I just let them do it, and then they send me a mix, and then I'll make notes if I have any. I kind of it drives me crazy being there for mixing, and I think it also makes it enhances that sensation where it never sounds done to me because I was just around it for the whole thing, and all I hear is like, oh, we could have done something to this kick drum here, and that you kind of get away from the point of music after a while. It's a mixing is a skill set that I'm fine to do it on my GarageBand demos and things, but if it's the finished product that's going out into the world, I am totally happy releasing control and turning it over to somebody else because chances are I have lost perspective by that point anyway, and it's good to have here are the raw materials, turn this into something. And again, and the ego had a lot to do with it. I wanted to just sort of be the full artist with in control of everything. And it's like, I don't have time for it and I'm not good enough and it's fine. They're my songs. Let somebody who knows what they're doing, I'll turn it over to somebody who's good at this to let it sound good. And I don't have to be involved with that part of it as much. I'll give input when asked, I'll give notes, but I don't have to be sitting there the entire time saying, what did you do there? How about just a little quieter on that hi-hat?
Let the professionals do what the professionals do.
Right, exactly. Let the song dictate what gets done. Yeah.
Here's some words you said earlier. I like these words. I even wrote them down. Emotional, dark, angst, and talking about feeling pain in the music. Those things all remind me of Sad Mad Nothing.
I can tap into that, and I am not, it doesn't mean, that, and that's, yeah, for the listener, that is the current solo single I have out right now. And it's a very dark, heavy song. And, I am not immune to feeling that way now, every now and then. That was written last summer in the height of the pandemic, where, my wife and I had moved to the Bay Area. We had just started cultivating a group of friends that suddenly we were no longer able to see. So it was basically just the two of us in this little, 750 square foot apartment. She was working from home. It was like living in a submarine. So my big escape, I would just go out on long walks during the day. And, none of the news seemed to be good. I was isolated from the people I loved back in Ohio. I was isolated from people I was just getting to know out here. I had the solo project was just getting rolling when the pandemic started. And so the rug was pulled out for me. There was a lot of frustration, a lot of depression, a lot of the whole world was feeling it. They were just dark times. And so I just basically wrote about what I felt like, and kind of put it to sort of a Neil Young Crazy Horse kind of grind, kind of stomp that he specializes in, because that's just what it sounded like to me. And I debated. I was kind of, when it came time to, it's like, do I really want to release that kind of energy in the world? The world has plenty of that energy right now. And I was a little, because I really made it a conscious attempt in all my writing during the pandemic to not shy away from, the darkness that everybody was feeling, but also to make sure that each song had a little ray of sunshine somewhere in there, a little bit of hope coming. This one didn't, this was kind of the one of that batch of songs that didn't have that. It was just kind of reveling in it, kind of rolling around in the mud without any sunlight coming in at all. And I was like, is this really what the world needs? And I kind of had a conversation with myself, and I realized that, art is good for several different things. Obviously, escape is a valuable service that art and music provide. You can put it on, forget your troubles, come on, get happy, go somewhere nicer. But at the same time, art can also provide company when you are going through dark times. And there's, just ask any goth music fan. There's something to be said for leaning into it and listening to something that says, hey, you're not alone in feeling this way. And so it's not something I try to put out regularly. I give it more thought now the older I get. Back in my angry 20s, I was just like, yeah, this is where I'm at. And the music in general seemed to just sort of have a lot of that going on then. Now I try to kind of think about, well, just have a little bit of hope, a little ray of hope in there somewhere. But my wife told me a long time ago, when I was, it's been a long self-referential joke of me and my depressing songs, sad bastard music. It's like, oh yeah, when I get invited to play a wedding reception, it's like, have you heard my songs? Shrug has done them. They're weird. It's going to be a short set. I can't really think of any appropriate songs to wish the happy couple, a lovely future and all that. But yeah, my wife Patrice, when I was going on and on about how, depressing and dark most of my songs are, she said, well, your songs make people feel like they're not alone.
Yep.
And so this is kind of sort of falls into that category. You're not alone in this. I'm feeling it too. Let's feel this way together for a while.
Yeah, let's all feel this way. I'm going to drop Sad Man Nothing into the track right now so you, the listener, could hear it.
Seeing how the bad blood blood lingers. I go out and take a walk till the anger goes away. But it doesn't go away, it doesn't go away. It just turns into something sick and churning, filling up my stomach, and it sits there burning with the other lumps of coal and the things I'm frightened of, until there's no more room for trust and there's no more room for love. Sad, mad, or nothing. Sad, mad, or nothing. I got a dozen bloody fist prints painting the wall. Sad, mad, or nothing at all. Sad, mad, nothing at all. Outside there's a 500 million people caught between the bottle and the needle and the steeple. They're looking for the light, looking for some easy way. There ain't no easy way, there ain't no easy way. There's just a hole in the shape of the future, floating in the ether, bleeding from the suture. I can see it in the window, sucking up the light. I can see it in the corner, in the middle of the night. Sad, mad, or nothing. Sad, mad, or nothing. I got a dozen bloody fist prints painting the wall. Sad, mad, or nothing at all. Another year, hot summer, a little older, a lot dumber. So tear it down, we need the lumber. Ain't nothing changed but a goddamn number. Bloody fist prints painting the wall. Sad, mad, or nothing at all. Got a dozen bloody fist prints painting the wall. Sad, mad, or nothing at all. Oh, sad, mad, nothing at all.
now you folks have heard Sad Man Nothing.
You still with us?
Here's the thing, like, I relate to the feelings expressed in that song, and maybe that's why I like it so much.
Well, I think everybody does. You know, that's as happy as people. I mean, people say I'm generally a happy person. Everybody's got days like that.
Yeah. Well, see, I'm not generally a happy person. I'm taking medication to help with that, though. So
right, and I probably should be. You know, because I think you and I have talked about that in the past. It's just it's not necessarily something to tamp down and deny. There's value in it. Obviously, there's a lot of toxicity in it as well. But it's be honest with how you're feeling. Be in touch with it.
I find that writing songs helps me to process things, even if I'm not going to share the song.
Mm-hmm.
Same for you?
Absolutely. And not even songwriting, but it's amazing. I'll feel all wound up and just kind of, and I'll realize that it had been a long time since I've picked up a guitar. You know, it's been a couple of days since I'll just pick up a guitar and just play with no goals other than to kind of play for a while. And I invariably feel better after that. It's absolutely therapeutic for me. And my wish for everybody out there is that they have something that they can do where they can just kind of get lost in for a while and just kind of calm down and breathe and just sort of come out the other end of feeling like, oh God, I needed that. I mean, that is absolutely how I feel whenever I pick a guitar up. It's it doesn't have to be guitar. It can be gardening or very important to have something in your life where you can go. The happy place, I guess people call it.
Yeah. Get those dopamines and endorphins rolling.
Yes. Yeah.
So I want to circle back to songwriting.
Sure.
Mostly because you are well aware that you're one of my favorite songwriters.
You have been very kind in your praise over the years.
I don't lie about it. It's true. Easily top 5, which
wow.
Well, here's the thing.
I know your top. I know some of the other people in your top 5. That is high praise. Thank you.
One of the things I like about your songwriting is your lyrics are very literate. Almost as if your brain is tasty because you like to read, perhaps.
I wish I read more. I'm a little embarrassed at how little real reading I do. I'd like to get back into it.
But it's clear that your lyrics, you just don't drop them and you don't go with the first thing that comes to you. You're clearly crafting your lyrics.
Mm-hmm.
You pay attention to alliteration and you use it as a weapon when you can.
Yeah.
It's clear that you choose exactly which word that you want to use in a sentence or in a phrase with care.
Mm-hmm.
I want to know how many edits it takes from first draft of lyrics to when you feel that you're done.
Well, obviously,
weeks, aren't we?
Oh, it's like pulling teeth more often than not. I mean, and it varies from song to song. You know, sometimes, it's the old cliche really is true. The ones that just come falling out tend to be the best songs because you don't overthink them too much. Having said that, though, I do a lot of sculpting. I do a lot of revision. The music is so much easier to come up with than words, and almost always it's the music first. And then I hear a melody, and then I get kind of the meter of the melody, and then I try to fit words in with that meter. A lot of times I don't know what the lyrics are going to be about. Sometimes I'm told long after the fact what the words are about, and I never do know what they're about. But I think it comes from my dad was a high school English and literature teacher, grammar and literature for 33 or so years. And this is a guy who would sit at the dinner table with us and recite sonnets. So from a very, very early age, I was taught his love of words and how the right one can really just get you like nothing else can. It's literally in my blood. It's in my DNA. I think a love of words and just the joy you can get of finding just the right one that fits the meter perfectly and yeah, alliteration, like you said, sometimes that's accidental. I don't really realize it, but maybe it's just a skill set I have that I might take for granted that other people notice and I don't really pay attention to. But I'm glad, regardless. Yeah, there's a lot of revision because I just want it to be right, and I like it. I like it when it sounds like somebody's put some thought into the words. But then again, Little Richard, as Little Richard said, a wop bopple doo bop a lop bam boom.
None of
that
which
works
are words.
too.
None of which are words, all of which we know.
But man, it's a feeling, So every song is different. I had a song just come falling out the other night, and there's nothing particularly poetic about it, but it gets its point across, and I think that's the end game for any good song. Is it going to get its point across? Is it going to affect the listener the way you want the listener to be affected? I've got a new appreciation over the last few years of being able to. I call it relating simple truths in creative and meaningful ways. I was lucky enough to spend some time in a band with a Dayton singer-songwriter named John Dubuck, who is one of my favorite lyricists.
He's witty, I think, is the first word that I would use to describe. His songs are great, but he's witty.
He is, yeah. There are all these little internal rhymes in the verses and plays on words, which I respond to because it reminds me of my dad. But he is a big fan of John Prine. John Prine is his be-all, end-all, a singer-songwriter who it took me forever to get into, because there was a point in my development where let me just show everybody how many big words I know. There's a bit of showing off involved. It's like, well, let's put this 4-syllable word in here because, why not? But then, and John Prine is very simple, plain spoken. And it took me a while to latch onto him. But when I really started, and I credit John Dubuck for this, he really you should really listen to these songs. And I did. And I've got a new appreciation for taking simple 1- and 2-syllable words that are just the right words and having them just land with a thud. And you just listen to what he's saying. It's like, wow, he didn't have to pull his thesaurus out, but man, why am I crying now? It doesn't necessarily mean how complicated the words have to be, how fancy they have to be. It's when they get put together, how it affects you when you're listening. And one of my mentors and idols, Peter Mulvey, who I've had the pleasure of playing with countless times when he's come through Ohio, and he kind of went through that phase sort of ahead of me a few years. And so I'm kind of on a similar trajectory and if you write songs long enough, you kind of start becoming fascinated with different ways to do it. And right now, this current batch of songs, I'm really trying hard to leave the thesaurus on the shelf when I'm writing, and just try to kind of get the point across simply. Throw enough color and poetry in there to keep, quote unquote, keep my brand. But yeah, just try. It's a subtractive way of working. It's kind of, I think all artists sort of evolve that way, whether they try to or not. It's where you just say more and more with less and less. It's kind of where the real craftsmanship comes in, I think.
Not that there's anything wrong with 4-syllable words.
Not at all.
It's the right one.
If there is a time and a place for everything. Absolutely.
Incommunicado is 6 syllables, isn't it?
Yeah, right. Exactly.
That's in City of San Jose.
I'll never exactly. Right? Second line of the song, incommunicado. Right. I'll never abandon the big fancy words because they're beautiful and they're fun and they sound good coming off your tongue. But yeah, it's also at the same time, how does Sad But Nothing start? I've been looking through my fingers. I've been seeing how the bad blood lingers. I go out and take a walk until the anger goes away, but it doesn't go away.
And then you repeat that.
Exactly.
It doesn't go away. It doesn't go away.
So there are no big words in that, but it's getting the point across. And sometimes putting myself in the position of of where I was at that time, somebody really upset and depressed, they're not gonna come up with a Shakespearean soliloquy.
Nope.
They're, because that those lyrics came from a brain that was just trying to hang in there and get through the day, and not burning clean at all. It's there's one or two syllable words that's what I'm using today, and not very many of them, just at that. So yeah, it's all part of what is the character in the song, what is the voice of the character in the song. You kind of have to write to that sometimes too.
And that song's great. Like,
thank you. People seem to be relating to it, which is validating.
That world in general.
Yeah, exactly. It's validating and not a little concerning at the same time, because so many people shouldn't be feeling this way at the same time. That tells you kind of the world we're living in right now. But I'm just glad it connected.
And for those of us who are familiar with your songwriting, it sounds like a Tod Weidner song. So
thank you.
I mean, it should, but like in a very satisfactory way.
It is one of the more shrug-sounding songs of the solo batch that are going to be coming out over the next year or so. Yeah.
So let's talk about that. We're recording this in December, but this episode is not going up until early February, which means you might have something else out.
I could have two new things. Definitely one, and possibly a second song by the time this podcast. I have two current singles right now as we're speaking.
Yep, that'd be "City of San Jose" is the first one. Yeah. I think Americana is the way to describe that one.
Definitely, yeah. Yeah, I can't deny it. Yeah, it's like I said,
country
it's my love
adjacent,
language.
but not country.
It's more of a singer-songwriter. And, it's a singer-songwriter with an acoustic guitar. There's going to be a little bit of that flavor coming through.
Yeah,
it's in an alternate tuning that doesn't get used in Americana very often. It's in Dadcat, which is, I think, was kind of explored by the British folk guys in the '60s. Like
bass player, that went right over my head. Y'all have too many strings on those things. It's Sad Mad Nothing's a rock and roll song to me.
Yeah, unabashed. Yeah.
But you said possibly two more in January. It sounds like you're dropping a single every few weeks. And are you working your way up for an EP or for a full length?
Well, yeah, it's the idea with my buddy Jack, who's my manager and the head of the production company. He's really behind this whole project, and I'll have to circle back and kind of talk about that in a minute. But our plan is to release a digital single roughly once a month. And then eventually have enough to put a physical album or EP together. I was just talking with him yesterday, and we were talking about, possibly collecting the singles we have, the first 5 or whatever, and having a digital EP to start with, and then, hopefully manifesting itself into something you can actually hold and stick in a CD player, because I'm old school. I like having physical copies of things. There are still a few of us out there.
I still buy CDs, so yeah.
Yeah, me too. But excuse me. But there are some songs in the shoot. We've got long versions with long intros and outros, and so we might, just to kind of keep the variety and give impetus to buy the EP when it comes out. Maybe it's a different mix or a different version,
very smart,
a longer version, extended version, or something of some of these songs. Yeah, but yeah. So
it's nice to see how you're adapting to the way, I hate to say the kids, but the way the modern music listener consumes music.
Yeah,
because this is not
being dragged kicking and screaming into it.
Go back 20 years, you weren't dropping a single every few weeks. You put all your energy into making an album, and you told a cohesive story, and it was like.
It's funny you should say that, because in the early, I guess around the early aughts, I was thinking how cool it would be, because I'm a fan of a lot of my musical roots come from the '60s, and I loved how bands would put singles out just as standalone singles, and then eventually just collect the singles into an album. And like the Rolling Stones did it, the Kinks, all those bands they were known for their singles at the time, the Beatles, up to a point, and then they became an album band, obviously. But I was thinking in the early aughts how cool it would be for Shrug to just start putting out 45s, like the punk bands and the indie bands do, 7 inches and things like that. It was prohibitively expensive at the time, but now we've kind of come full circle, where, well, the overhead of putting physical copies, everybody's streaming things and everybody's listening to digital versions, so it makes a lot of sense we've all kind of gone back to the single mindset, and that's may not be that's a good thing and a bad thing, because I'm a big fan of the statement that an album makes and listening to it in sequence front to back. It's an experience, an immersive experience. I feel that way. A lot of people do, but the vast majority of the listening public just wants a little dopamine hit, 3-minute song, a single. And then most things are listened to on shuffle anyway nowadays. Playlist. So so that's a whole other can of worms. I could rant on that forever, but so you got to kind of play. You got to dance with them that brung you. That's the world we're in, and so it's cool. I'll put a single out, and then another single, and then another single. But the idea is going to be, I want to have a CD or a record or something to hold in your hand eventually.
You still believe in the album as an art form in and of itself.
Absolutely.
Which means that in some way, shape, or form, you're going to keep making albums.
Mm-hmm.
But in order to, stay with modern consumption, got to play that game too. So
sure. Yeah.
I'm looking forward to seeing how these first 2 songs in your new iteration will fit with whatever you've got coming next into an album. I think that's one of the fun things when you like an artist and they're working on stuff and they're not telling you what's coming. Well, what's the next thing going to sound like?
There are some definitely, especially for someone who is familiar with what I've done in the past, there are going to be some interesting new directions. The next song coming out it's a straight up soul song, and that is one of the things about the solo project. I'm, as much as I love the Shrug guys, there were certain styles of music we were good at and certain styles of music we just either weren't convincing enough at or just really couldn't wrap our heads around. And so there are songs in this batch where I kind of I leaned into the fact that I didn't have this certain group of people that I was writing with the idea of them accompanying me. I could go and try different things out that I've always loved, but just for whatever reason didn't work out in the context of Shrug, which was my main way of getting songs out to the world past. So yeah, we've got a soul song coming up here. We've got a few other little weird detours and things. It's going to be a little bit all over the place.
This is good.
It is good. And it reminds me of one of. I'm not comparing necessarily stylistically, or certainly. I'm not saying I'm in the same league, but when Jeff Buckley put out Grace, that is a crazy record. If you're listening to this not familiar with Jeff Buckley's album Grace, is his debut album. It's an incredible. It's a showcase for his incredible voice, but there's a British carol from the Middle Ages. There's his cover of Leonard Cohen's Hallelujah is the one that most people know from him, but there's a lot of Led Zeppelin flavor on that. There's some really crushing rock and roll songs.
Eternal Life comes to mind.
Eternal Life, yeah. And it's all kind of a centerpiece for him. And so I will be the first one to admit I do not have the voice of Jeff Buckley or any of the skill sets of Jeff Buckley, but there's a variety of these songs that I'm enjoying. It's
1994, wasn't that one? Did that not 94?
Yeah, it was late 1994. He did the EP right before that. And then he was in the process of making a second full length when he died. So it was the tragic story made even more tragic because his dad also died tragically young and had a cult following as well. It's eerie parallels there.
There are. So one of the reasons I'm glad you're exploring different genres is, for people who don't know Todd, he used to host a radio show on our local NPR station, and it was the most eclectic, I don't know another word, just eclectic batch of music. Like a punk song followed by a Senegalese guitarist, followed by cumbia or rumba or reggae, followed by singer-songwriter.
Yeah.
Geographically and stylistically, that show went everywhere. And, you know, you weren't using a machine to curate that. This was all music that you personally like.
Yeah.
And I was just blown away at how encyclopedic your knowledge of
Well, I learned a lot. Yeah. I mean, every episode I learned a ton because I was researching this stuff and writing. I was literally writing a script out for a 3-hour radio show every week. So it took over a big chunk of my life. But God bless WYSO for letting me play Black Flag and then Billie Holiday and then, you know, and then Bombino and then, you know, Ali Farka Touré or whatever. I couldn't have done that on anywhere else on the dial. So they gave me a great platform to do that with. But I have always been a huge geek for all different kinds of music. I think the more you listen to, the healthier it is. You know, it's because it may or may not filter into my own music, but the fact that I think there's a little bit subliminally that does filter into what I do. Yeah.
As musicians and artists, well, especially when you, right, nothing's really ever new, right? There's only so many notes we have to play with. And
Keith Richards said there's only one song and Adam and Eve wrote it. Everything else has been a variation on the theme. You know,
that's very reductive, but that's not wrong.
Yeah, but it's the point. Yeah, the point is there's 12 notes.
Unless you're
there's 8 notes. There's 12 frets, I guess I should say.
Unless you're in that Eastern kind of canon where they play as semitones that we don't use, but
which is I find fascinating as well. Exactly. I'm hoping to someday get into that, but that means bringing a different guitar to the gig with microtonal frets on it and everything.
Or you can just buy a sitar, right?
Yeah, I can tell a musical artist that only listens to the genre that they work in, and it usually doesn't move me. It's kind of essential to keep your ears open. You don't even it can, you know, and that's the thing. It's like influences go both ways. Again, you can hear something that influences you to do something. You can hear something that will influence you to go completely in the other side. I don't like that at all. You were still influenced by it.
Yep.
Yeah. So I think it's really, really, really important to be as voracious as you can as an artist and just take it all in. Doesn't mean you have to use it, but be aware of it. And you never know. You might be able to pull out this little West African guitar line. I've got one song in the chute somewhere that this little West African, almost microtonal sounding kind of thing comes out. It's like, oh, well, where was that hiding all this time? It's tucked away in a corner of my brain. Yeah. So yeah, I love stuff like that. I love little tastes and flavors and sprinkles on top of things.
And I'm sure I'm not the only person that has been introduced to an artist or style of music they were not previously familiar with, either due to your show or due to going to your shows. As a young person, I listened to a lot of music in the same, well, I was one of those people who listen to all the same genre, right? And I remember going to Shrug shows and hearing you guys cover Patti Smith or Elvis Costello or Bowie. And, you know, these are actually really well-known artists, of course, but young me didn't know this.
But outside your bubble at the time.
Yeah, outside my bubble at the time. Right. And the more I listen to music, like the more I can hear those influences in some of the stuff that you do and in some of the other stuff that I listen to. And yeah, you're right. The more you listen to, the more well-rounded you are. If you're making music, definitely as an artist, but even as a listener, there's nothing wrong with more music. You don't have to listen to it. If you don't like it, just don't listen to it twice. But like,
yeah, you know, there's nothing wrong with something not being your cup of tea, but don't let well, I heard this one country guy play, and so that way, there's nothing for me in country music anymore. There's no reason to listen to any of that stuff. You just kind of have to try to take it on an individual basis. If you hear enough in one genre, that's like, okay, well, none of this stuff has really been hitting me. Maybe this stuff isn't for me. That's fine. But yeah, somebody to say like, oh, I like everything. I like all music except rap. It's like, there's some really, really good hip hop out there. It's like, you must not have heard A Tribe Called Quest or,
Rakim or
right. Yeah, Eric B. and Rakim or I could go on and on and on, but it's just writing off a whole genre. It's generally not a smart thing to do. And it says a whole lot more about you as a listener than it does about the genre that you're slagging.
Especially since the farther we go, genres kind of seem to blend, right? You find hip hop beats in modern pop country all over the place.
Yeah, for sure.
And pop music.
Yeah.
Even pop music that doesn't sound remotely like hip hop if you just want to sing the lyrics.
Right.
Are you listening to the whole rest of the track?
And truth be told, whether people want to admit it or not, and I know this rankles a lot of the old guard, the gatekeepers, the old white guys, quote unquote. But the innovation is happening in hip hop these days. The production innovations, the technological, the big technological steps and leaps are being taken in that genre now. That's just the way it is. In electronic music, that's the vanguard now. There's not discrediting what's going on in the world of rock and roll right now at all, by any means. But it is not. I don't think it's necessarily the cutting edge that it once was,
which is okay.
Fine. Yeah, totally fine. It's the rock is dead crowd, or it's like a rock isn't dead. Well, it doesn't really matter. It's being put out. It's never going to die. There's always going to be rock bands playing.
I feel like Neil Young said that.
Yeah, it comes out of the mouths of older generation musicians a lot, and a lot of it I think is born of there's a certain degree of insecurity about that, because as you get older, I'm feeling it now. I'm like I said earlier, I'm 51 years old now, and I am on Instagram trying to promote my stuff, and God, I'm actually on TikTok sometimes too. And
I wanted to talk to you about that. We'll circle back to TikTok.
Yeah, I've never felt more 51 than I am when I'm trying to figure out what to do on TikTok, because I fully admit I am insecure about things that I feel like there are times when I feel like I'm being left behind by things. And I think everybody feels that way as they get older. It doesn't mean that what's going on now isn't valid. And it doesn't mean what you're doing still is invalid either. It's just, there's everything can coexist together. There's, when people are talking, disparaging teeny bopper, disposable pop stars, Frank Sinatra was one of those. When he was singing for Tommy Dorsey, he was this young teenage heartthrob that all the girls were screaming about. He was the Justin Bieber of his day. It's all the same thing. So there's room for everything. And some of these pop stars, like Justin Timberlake, became a legitimately heavy dude. He's putting out some really cool stuff. He started out he was in NSYNC, right?
He was in NSYNC.
Yeah, right. So give people room to grow, and he listens to a lot of different stuff. You can tell. Again, go back to my earlier point.
I feel like he listens to a lot of Michael Jackson based on his dance moves and a lot of the songs he's done. Yeah,
it's kind of hard to escape that if you're into any kind of pop music. MJ looms pretty large.
Yep.
Yeah.
So for the last topic, because you've been on here a long time, I don't want to take your entire day, even though I would totally love to, because I'll
nerd out about this all day long until the cows come home, for sure.
Let's talk about TikTok. And people tell me that all of us musicians should be on it, and I feel like I'm too old. And here you are, 7 years older than me, and you're on TikTok.
Well, I'm still trying to figure it out. And I was actually talking to my buddy Jack about this. I should give a little background on Jack.
Please do. I know Jack, but the other people listening don't know Jack.
Jack Pyatt. He's an Ohio guy. I've known him since the mid to late '90s. Basically, he's been one of my most vocal, ardent, loyal, diehard fans of what I do in whatever way that my music manifests itself. He has preached the gospel of shrug to more people probably than anybody else in the world. He's turned so many people on. He's believed in what I do, even when I didn't. When I moved out here to the Bay Area, he got a hold of me because he lives Southern California. He was in LA at the time. Now he lives in Ohio, but regardless, off topic. He said, "Man, I have always wanted you to do a solo album." And I have been asked about that many times over the years, but as you touched on earlier, Shrug is my songs. So in a way, I didn't really feel the need to do a solo album because it's kind of, a solo album of me wouldn't sound a whole lot different, unless it's these new styles I'm trying to make. Anyway, he says, basically, Jack was in a position to finance recording of a solo project, which was incredibly sweet of him and very kind of him. And my wish for any musical artist is that they have a Jack in their life who believes in them and actually has connections and the means to help them. I am fully aware in what a privileged position I'm in right now. I should get that out of the way right now. But so he's my right hand man through this, and he's got a Rolodex that would just drop your jaw. And I have been, even now, so far, I have been able to record with some legitimate heroes of mine and some really, really heavy musicians who I've never thought I would get to meet, much less work with. More on that, I guess, later as the singles start coming out. But,
yep. We'll save that for another episode because obviously you're going to come back sometime. But and
I've completely forgotten what I was talking about. Where
TikTok was the end goal.
Oh, TikTok, that's right. Yeah,
you're explaining Jack first. So
yes. So Jack was, he's helping me kind of navigate all these different ways of social media because he's had a lot of experience with this. He's a film producer and he's been involved in a lot of different music things. He was one of the founding members of an app called Jam Card, which is a simplified description of Jam Card is it's basically LinkedIn for professional musicians. It's a networking site that you kind of get invited to be in, or you kind of have to be accepted into, and then it's sort of like a private little networking community for pro career lifer musicians. So he kind of knows how to play that game, and he's been trying to kind of guide me through the whitewater rapids of social media, some of which I'm more comfortable with than others. With TikTok, I'm having a hard time getting my head around. But we were talking about that just yesterday, and he says, don't just try to get on TikTok to just do things all the time. Wait until you have something to put on TikTok, which is a mistake I was making at first. I was just throwing. It's like, it's only a minute long. It's a verse and a chorus of one of my songs, and then that just kind of gets samey after a while. You just wait and try to find an angle that. I think TikTok works when you have something fresh to do without it becoming gimmicky and becoming all you're known for. That's the tricky line to walk with TikTok, because if you do a thing, say like if I don't know, I'm trying to think of an example, but if I say I've got like a bunch of cheater guitar tricks on how to fret this chord or that, if I started a series doing that, showing like alternate easy ways to do a G chord, say, then if it catches on, then I run the risk of becoming the chord cheat guy, and then it starts overshadowing what you're doing as a career. And so I don't really have any answers for you, Mike, on TikTok. It's just trial and error, and I've really I've not been engaging with it very much because it feels forced and self-conscious when I do it, and I'm trying to kind of figure out what my voice, if any, on TikTok is, because it really is a legitimately good way to become known, but you just have to be careful the way you become known on TikTok.
Yeah, I'm told it's a large music discovery platform.
It can be. I've been told that too. I'm still trying to figure out how.
I don't like. Again, this is me being old. I just don't.
Right. Well, it kind of ties in with there seems to be a wave of young musicians, whether it's good or bad, it's not for me to say, but I've got my thoughts on it. It seems to be a minute of somebody shredding on guitar, which is cool, and it there is an audience for that. Some of these people have become very, 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 very popular. It remains to be seen if when they get on stage with other people, if they're going to be able to function in that environment. It may not even be what they're going for. It could be TikTok, a minute here and there on TikTok, maybe the end game for them. I don't know. It's not for me to say. But
that's not my skill set.
Nor is it.
I've seen you do some shreddy stuff.
Yeah, but I'm not like that kind of. I'm not that level, and I don't think I would want to be anyway. I'm not sure how that would work in my music, in what I do. But,
well, that's what I'm thinking. If the goal is just to go viral or be popular, for those of us who wish to do music for a living, we're not talking about necessarily being popular.
Yeah.
But we just wish to connect with an audience and make a living from connecting with people.
Right.
How does that help you do that? If you go viral on TikTok, are those people going to buy your album?
I don't know.
When it comes out on CD or vinyl, are they going to come to your show?
For you and me, for instance, that remains to be seen. I don't know if that's the audience that you want to cultivate, and that gets to a larger concern I have with just the dwindling of the human attention span that seems to be perpetuated by TikTok and Snapchat and all these little soundbite oriented things. We talked about we're both album guys. Where you sit and go on the journey, the 12-track journey. There's a whole generation that doesn't compute with them, and that. I hate the term. It is what it is, but it really is what it is. It's just that's what they know. That's the new reality.
Breaks my heart. I know we're in old man yells at cloud territory here. But...
Definitely, you took the words right out of my mouth, and so I'm going to try to refrain from doing that. But I kind of lament that it's not that just putting an album out and having people buy it and listen to the album is not a given anymore. And so these people probably. These TikTok people probably like, oh, why would I want to do an album? That's about as irrelevant to them as me being on TikTok may feel to me at times. But if it's a way to get your name in front of some people who legitimately love music, one of the things that Jack and I talked about when we were sort of embarking on this project was. The fact that I am the age I am, coming from the background I am, doing the music that I'm doing, it's kind of apples and oranges with a lot of what's going on, especially on the internet these days. And so he and I have both. He's around my age as well, and we decided it's like and we'll see. We'll see if we get burned on this. We're making this up as we go, but. We're approaching it in a more organic fashion. We're not trying to overhype things. We're letting our audience come to me. We're letting my audience, come to me. It may take longer than a viral TikTok video, but I will have the comfort at this certain point knowing that these people who are listening to me and buying my stuff are buying it because they genuinely love what I'm doing, and they aren't going to drop me when the next shiny object comes along.
Yep.
Which I think is the nature of a lot of modern pop culture. Well, I guess it's really the nature of pop culture as long as there's been pop culture. Yeah, it's popular. It's in the name. It's what is popular at the moment. My ultimate situation would be to be in a position of somebody like Elvis Costello, for example. not by any means a household name, but he does have several 100,000 people in the world who will buy whatever he puts out reliably and will go and see him whenever he comes in their area. And for an artist doing what I'm doing, I couldn't ask for any more. I couldn't hope for any more, and I don't necessarily want any more than that.
Yeah, I think that if you're an independent artist and you're not trying to be, insert cliche, rich and famous, right? Mm-hmm. You make art
because you have to.
Because you have to, right?
Yeah. It's a compulsion.
We do this anyway. It would just be nice if someone would listen to it.
Exactly. Right.
And it would also be nice if we could make a living doing what we're going to do anyway.
But be here in this room with me for the right reasons, you know. Yeah. And you know, and again, this is not to disparage what anybody else wants to do. This is my path makes me uncomfortable just to be out there, you know, chilling myself and just, you know, going for viral. I'm not a viral person. I've never have been.
Well, I think the last 2 years are showing us that viruses are not necessarily good.
Yeah, it's kind of changed the whole flavor of that word. But
you do already kind of have an audience from years of Shrug, and you've generated a lot of goodwill because you have a track record of being a talented musician, of being an actual decent human being, which goes a long way.
At the end of the day, you have to be able to sleep at night and look at yourself in the mirror. That's what it all comes down to. And again, that's kind of what I was getting at by not disparaging the TikTok crowd. It's like, yeah, if they're fine with what they're doing, that's great. I would be uncomfortable with it myself. And whatever you do, you it's what it all comes down to. But you have to be true to yourself. Patti Smith said, "Your name is your currency." And that really resonated with me. You know, you have to be careful with what your name is attached to. You have to be able to own it, what you do and how you're perceived. Otherwise, what's the point in doing it? It's you know, you got to be happy with the product you're putting out, whatever it may be. There are ways to still do things with integrity. The integrity's taken a hit over the last couple decades, but you know, there's still such a thing, and that's where I want to live. And anybody else, yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, anybody else who is with me is welcome to join me on that journey. You know,
that's a fantastic place to end. Like it kind of wraps it all up. Thank you again to Tod Weidner for guesting on this podcast. Dear listener, I encourage you to visit the show notes, click on the links, find out what Tod has going on musically, keep up with all those delicious songs that he's putting out for us to taste. Thank you also for listening to this podcast, and I encourage you to subscribe if you get the chance. Subscribe on the platform of your choice. Next episode number 8, we go to Texas, and I interview an independent musician from there. See you soon.